Continuation of The Hardy Boys and the Missing Chums, Chapter 14, The Storm. The four men had dinner about the campfire, and when the meal was over, the man they called Red got up. "May as well go back to the cave," he remarked. "It's cooler than out here." "It's hot enough to put a man to sleep out here on these rocks," said one of the others. "Yeah, let's go on up to the cave." "I don't like the idea of staying too close to the cave," growled the man who had been by the fire. "If anybody comes around here and should find us, they'll have a look some to find them, as long as we're not near the cave, see?" "That's all right, Pete," retorted Red. "If anyone comes on this island, we'll know in good enough time to clear away from the cave. We may as well keep cool." There was a grumbled assent from Pete, and then the Hardy Boys heard sounds of receding footsteps as the quartet strode through the grass. They waited until the men were out of earshot and then peered through the undergrowth. "Shall we follow them?" asked Joe eagerly. "You bet we will. I want to know where this cave is that they're talking about, and I want to know who the prisoners are that they've mentioned. Do you think it really could be Chet and Biff?" "I'm almost sure of it. Didn't you hear the fellow say that the prisoner kept insisting that they'd been mistaken? We've figured it out right all along. They captured Chet and Biff by mistake." The Hardy Boys began to move through the undergrowth on the trail of the four men. They crouched down and kept to the shelter of the bushes, so that they were able to proceed at a good rate of speed without exposing themselves to view. "If we can only get into the cave and get Chet and Biff free," exclaimed Joe. "It won't be any too easy. They seem to be guarding them pretty closely. First of all, we've got to be certain that it is them." "I don't think there's any doubt of that. Everything hangs together too well. If we could get them out, we could run for the boat and get them away from the mainland." "That's what we'll have to plan on. But the main thing is to find this cave." "Yes, of course." The four men in the lead had entered the outskirts of a small grove towards the center of the island. Frank could just see the heads and shoulders of the last man disappearing into the woods. He marked the spot where the fellow had entered the grove, and the Hardy Boys made towards it. They found it comparatively easy to follow the trail, where the others had beaten down the grass and twigs in passing, and in a few minutes they had reached the grove. "Go slow," cautioned Frank, as they entered the shadow of the trees. "They may have seen us crossing the clearing." They listened for a moment. They could hear the crashing of branches and the crackling of twigs, the distant hum of voices as the quartet continued through the woods, so they went ahead. The wood was steaming hot, and the ground was dank underfoot. The grass was long, and the leaves of the trees drooped of their own weight. Once Frank saw a black snake scurrying away through the grass, but none of the snakes bothered them. The path the boys followed was beaten down by the feet of the men ahead, and they made easy progress until at length the sight of a clearing ahead warned them to again exercise caution. They crept along through the trees and underbrush until the clearing came fully into view. It was that part of the interior of the island where the swamp gave way to the rocks, and the grassy clearing led in a gradual slope on a high wall of rock, at the base of which was the mouth of the cave. As the Hardy Boys watched, they could see the four men at the opening. One of the fellows, a tall man, was mopping his brow with a handkerchief, while another man with a shock of red hair was just going into the cave. The other two had flung themselves down on the rocks in the shadow of some overhanging bushes. "So that's the cave," exclaimed Frank. "I wonder if Chet and Biff are inside." "Most likely. I wish we could get a little closer." "Too dangerous. They can see anyone coming into the clearing." This was true. The cave had evidently been chosen not only for its possibilities as a shelter, but for its defensive virtues as well. It was plainly the hangout of the gang. "We'll have our work cut out for us to get in there," muttered Frank. "The place is too much in the open. Our only chance is to wait until some of them go away. We might be able to sneak up closer when they're asleep." We can try it. The only thing for us to do right now is to wait until they're all asleep." The boys settled themselves down in the bushes, preparing for a vigil until nightfall. It was now late in the afternoon, and when Frank glanced up at the sky he saw that the clouds had gathered. The sunshine had gone, for a dense black cloud obscured the sun. The sultry and oppressive heat of the afternoon had evidently presaged a storm. "Looks like rain." "Sure does," agreed Joe, looking up. As though in corroboration, there was an ominous rumble of thunder. The wind had died down. Every leaf, every blade of grass was still. The clouds were massing silently. However, the storm held off, and although the sky was overcast and threatened, twilight fell without rain. Frank and Joe, from their hiding place in the bushes, watched the 4 men moving aimlessly about the cave that afternoon. 2 of them had remained inside the cave for a long time, while the other pair chatted on the rocks outside. Night came at last. From the interior of the cave came the flickering of flame, and the Hardy Boys knew that the gang was making a fire for the night. The heat was still oppressive. Darkness fell without a moon or stars. "We'll soon be able to creep up on them," said Frank. "If we can only get close enough to hear what they're saying, we'll probably be able to make sure if they have Chet and Biff with them." The boys waited until the fire had died down. The 4 men had all disappeared within the cave. "Quiet now," Frank whispered. He began to make his way out of the undergrowth. Joe followed close behind. They crept up towards the entrance of the cave. They were about halfway across the open space when the whole scene about them was suddenly revealed with startling clarity in the livid glow of a flash of lightning. This was followed immediately by a crash of thunder that seemed to shake the very rocks on which they stood. As though this were but a prelude, rain began to fall, gently at first, and then with increasing force. Other lightning flashes followed. Then the storm broke in all its fury. A gradual rising wind began to take the tree-tops, and swishing of leaves and creaking of limbs could be plainly heard. The dull booming of the waves on the distant shore, the moaning of the wind, and the driving spatter of rain, the constant peals of thunder, continually rose in volume, and the rain poured furiously from the black skies above. The storm had broken so suddenly that the Hardy Boys were taken aback. Their first impulse was to race for shelter of the cave, but second thought told them that this would be unwise, for the men in the cave might be aroused by the storm. "We'd better go back to the boat," said Frank, turning about. "It's liable to be wrecked." Joe had almost forgotten about their motorboat. It was on the seaward side of the island, and the storm was coming in from the sea. Although the boat was partially protected by the little cove in which they had brought it, there was every danger that the storm might cast the craft upon the rocks and wreck it. The consequences in that case would be grave. They would be unable to escape from Black Snake Island at all without giving themselves up to the gang. The boys turned and fled back across the rocks. Rain streamed down upon them. Thunder crashed. Lightning flickered, illuminating for brief seconds the tossing trees and the tumbling rocks before them. Joe, during the afternoon, had occupied himself ascertaining the position of the grove and the cave relative to the little bay in which they had left the motorboat, and he had come to the conclusion that the grove was not far away from the end of the island and almost in a direct line with the cove. Now, in their mad race towards the shore, he took the lead, headlong towards the rocky bluffs. The Hardy Boys stumbled through the grove, keeping somehow to the trail. They were aided by the lightning flashes that gave spasmodic illumination, revealing the soggy leaves, the black branches, the tossing tree-tops, bowed in the wind. The storm had become a din of furious sound. The gale shrieked its way across the island from the booming sea, and the thunder rolled like a battery of cannon, while the rain beat down on the forest in a drumming downpour. The boys were soaked to the skin. They fled towards the shore, keeping their course more by instinct than judgment, and all the time there was the dread thought in their mind that they were lost if the sleuth should be cast up on the rocks and wrecked. Chapter 15. A startling announcement. The Hardy Boys reached the cove in the nick of time. Although the place was protected from the full fury of the sea, the high winds had lashed the waves to such an extent that the boat was pitching and tossing about in an imminent danger of running aground. The beach was sandy, however, and after some maneuvering, the boys were able to run the boat up on the shore where it was safe enough. The storm, by this time, was showing some signs of abating, although the rain was still pouring in undiminished vigor. Frank rummaged about the boat until he located their oilskins, and then they donned them, although their clothes were already drenched. "I'd hate to be out at sea on a night like this," shouted Frank, as the lightning revealed the tossing inferno of waves under the black skies. At that moment a light flashed away out to the right. "A boat!" exclaimed Joe, heading towards the island. They kept their eyes fixed on the place where they had seen the light. In a few moments a vivid flash of lightning cut the darkness, and they had a momentary glimpse of a small motorboat tossing about in the black waves. "He'll never make the shore in this storm," said Frank, shaking his head. "Can it be Tony?" "Hardly think so. He wouldn't come close in such a storm." "That's true, too. I think it's some outsider." "Do you think we can help him?" "I don't think so. He'll probably pile up on the rocks." "Perhaps he's one of the gang." "That's so," agreed Frank. "I hadn't thought of that. Perhaps he knows where he's going after all. Still, it won't hurt to go down the shore a bit and see if he makes his landing all right." They went on down the shore in the darkness, picking their way among the rocks, feeling in their faces the salty spray blown in from the sea. The dull booming of the surf and the howling of the wind provided an almost deafening cacophony of sound. Every little while a lightning flash would reveal the little boat slowly heading in towards the shore. Suddenly Frank stopped short, grasping his brother by the arm. "I saw a light ahead." "I thought I did too, right on the shore." They waited. In a moment the light reappeared. It bobbed slowly up and down and appeared to be moving down towards the beach. "Somebody is going down to meet the boat. It must be one of the gang," declared Frank. The boys went towards more cautiously. The next flash of lightning showed that Frank's assumption was correct. They could see 4 men in oilskins trudging down among the rocks. The man in the lead carried a powerful electric lantern that cast a vivid beam of light upon the rain-washed boulders. They saw the man in the motorboat was heading towards a small bay that afforded ideal protection from the storm. The entrance was very narrow, and a great wave dashed over the rocks with showers of white spray, but the man in the boat guided his craft skillfully into the channel. It was in difficulties for a few moments, but by good steering brought the craft around. Then it shot forward, making the channel neatly, and surged down towards the beach. The men in oilskins were there to meet him. The boat was run up on the sand, and the lone steersman sprang out and splashed through the water. For a few moments the 5 men conferred, standing there in the dark beach, with the wind whipping their oilskins about their legs, the lantern gleaming like a white eye, and the rain pouring down upon them. They looked like 5 sinister birds of prey as they stood there in the storm, and then they turned and began to walk back up over the rocks and towards the center of the island. "This must be the landing place," said Frank, "and that means they must have a good trail from here to the cave." "Let's follow them," suggested Joe. "Just what I was going to say. We know our boat is safe, and we can't get any wetter than we are now." The boys therefore made their way down to the place where the 5 men had been standing. They could see the reflection of the lantern as it bobbed up and down, while the people trudged back towards the trees, and they followed. True enough, There was a well-defined trail among the rocks, and they made easy progress, considering the darkness and the fact that the trail was unknown to them. The height of the storm had passed, and the rain had settled down to a steady downpour. The roar of the thunder had diminished to an occasional distant rumble, and the lightning flashes were less frequent. The wind, too, had died down. The light ahead guided them up the trail across the rock, when into the grove again, and in a short time they again emerged on the edge of the clearing and could see the dull mass of the granite slope before them. The fire still gleamed, and they could see the 5 men going into the cave, which was brilliantly illuminated for a moment in the light of the lantern, which the man held so that the others might pass. "We may as well go right up," said Frank. "We've come this far. There isn't any use backing down now. I'm with you." They crossed the rocks and crept up towards the entrance to the cave. They found tumbled boulders about the opening that afforded good protection, and they were able to make their way up within a few feet of the cave mouth without danger of being seen. The wind and the rain still created sufficient noise to drown out any sounds that they might have made in their approach. Through an opening in the boulders, they peeped into the cave. As they were in darkness, they knew there was little chance that they could be seen by the men within. As for the latter, they were in full glare of the fire, which one of the men had replenished from a pile of wood nearby. The boys, therefore, could see without being seen. The men were taking off their oilskins, and one of them, the newcomer, had flung himself down on a pile of blankets as though exhausted. "I tell you it was a tough trip," he was saying. "I was sure I was going to be wrecked. I couldn't find the passage. If you hadn't come along with the lantern when you did, I'd have been washed up on the rocks, and the boat would have been smashed to pieces." "Well, you're here, and that's all there is to it," declared the man they called Red. "You shouldn't have started out when you saw there was a storm coming up. I didn't know it was going to be so bad. Anyway, I thought I'd get here before it broke." "It must have been good news that brought you out here tonight," declared one of the others, sitting down. "I'll say it was good news," said the newcomer. "Mighty good news." "What is it?" they asked eagerly. "I found out why Fenton Hardy didn't pay any attention to the letter." The boys listened eagerly. At the mention of their father, they knew that all their suspicions had been verified. They waited tensely as the conversation went on. "Why?" asked Red. "He didn't get it." "Why didn't he get it?" The newcomer paused and smiled. "The reason he didn't get it," he said, slowly and triumphantly, "is because we've got him." "Got him?" "We've got Fenton Hardy." "How? Where?" "How do you know?" Questions were firing at the newcomer from all parts of the cave. He was enjoying the sensation he had caused. As for the hidden listeners, they experienced only a sickening amazement. "The gang got him in Chicago last night. I just got word this afternoon. He went out there to catch Baldy, but the boys got wind of it, and they laid a trap for him. He stepped right into it." "Good!" exclaimed the red-headed man, rubbing his hands. "What could be sweeter? We've got Hardy, and we've got his sons." "By the way, how are they acting?" asked the newcomer. "Oh, still kicking up a fuss. The young brats," growled the man called Pete. "They say they ain't the Hardy boys at all." "Don't worry about that. Bring 'em out here." One of the men got up from beside the fire and disappeared into the rear of the cave. His footsteps died away, and the Hardy boys judged that there must be some sort of inner chamber to the place. In a short time he returned, pushing ahead of him 2 boys. Frank and Joe peered forward, striving to catch a glimpse of the lad's features. With a clanking of chains, the boys emerged into the firelight. They were Chet Merton and Biff Hooper. The lads were handcuffs, and their ankles were bound by a gleaming length of chain, just long enough to enable them to walk. They appeared thin and tired. Their shoulders drooped wearily, and as they stood before the fire, they said nothing. "Well, Hardys," said the red-haired man in a harsh voice, "we have some news for you." "We've told you before," said Chet. "You've made a mistake. We're not the Hardy Boys." The man named Pete stepped suddenly forward from the shadows and cuffed Chet savagely on the side of the head. "Shut up," he snarled, and cuffed Biff Hooper as well. "No more of that. We're tired of listening to it. You're the Hardy Boys all right, and it won't do you no good to deny it now." "You've made a mistake," insisted Chet stubbornly. "We'll show you how much of a mistake we've made," roared one of the men. "We brought you out here to tell you something. Our men have got your father at last." "Mr. Hardy?" exclaimed Chet, greatly taken aback. "Yes, Mr. Hardy," exclaimed Red, mimicking him. "That shot sunk home, didn't it? We've got him, and we've got you, and we'll starve you into making your mother come across with the money we want. If you have been holding out, hoping your father would come for you, it's no good now. We've got him and we've got you, so you may as well give up." "There's no use asking us," declared Biff. "We're not the Hardy Boys." Red cuffed him viciously over the ears again, and Biff staggered back from the blow. "Oh, take them back and chain them up again," Red said in disgust. "Let 'em starve for a while. That'll make 'em change their tune." "If I could get loose for about 2 minutes, I'd show you," declared Biff, clenching his fists. But the red-haired man only laughed contemptuously. The Hardy Boys from their hiding places saw Pete come forward and drag Chet and Biff back into the darkness at the rear of the cave, their chains clanking as they went. And we will continue the story next Friday or Saturday. And thanks for listening to Miss Retro Reads.